What's going on, guys? So it is Friday, March 8th, I think. Let me double check that here. Focus. It's time to do some hand sanding. So before I get into hand sanding these blades, I know, like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 of you have come over from the Outdoors 55 channel, and I appreciate it. And since you were kind enough to come over and watch some of these videos over here, let me give you a sneak peek of what's coming up on the Outdoors 55 channel. So check this out. Not the angle grinder. Actually, we'll come back to this. I know the writing's upside down. This is a 1/8 inch by 1.5 by 48, 1/8 inch by 2 inch, and 1/8 inch by 3 inch by 48 piece of 1084 high carbon steel, and an angle grinder. So I'm not gonna have, like, actually I take that back. I am gonna have access to this and also that thing, the big grinder. But because I'm gonna be kind of back and forth between, like, clearing everything out over at the new shop and messing around with stuff in here, some of this stuff might be, like, out of access for the time being. So my plan is to go back to just an angle grinder, make a couple of videos, or at least a video with an angle grinder and some of this 1084. So stay tuned for some angle grinder and some back to basics videos. I'm thinking on these upcoming videos, I'm not going to be using the oven for my heat treating. We're going to go back and start using like really primitive things like fire. So that should be interesting. Alright, so I'm going to get going and start sanding on this, and I want to talk about some hand sanding real quick. The first thing I want to do here is put this on my surface plate with a piece of, this is kind of worn in sandpaper, and where's my magnet? And we'll just run this on the sandpaper to see our high and low spots along here. Once I kind of figure that out, we'll take us to the grinder and hollow out this midsection in the handle. So you can already start to see where we've got some of our high and low spots, and you know, that's not bad. Sometimes I'll put this on here and I'll get like a point here that gets, you know, all sanded, and then I'll get a point right at the tip, but it looks like we're fairly, you know, except for right in here, which that's okay. We can slowly work that out. It's actually best if you're flattening stuff like this to work in like a figure-8 pattern, but that's a pain in the butt. I don't have the dexterity to do that super well, so what I usually will do is kind of move it back and forth like this and constantly just change positions, and I'll move the magnet back and forth, and that'll usually give me a fairly flat blade when I'm done. I don't know what it is about hardened steel, but I can feel the difference between a hardened piece of steel and a piece of steel that's been fully annealed. I mean, this thing, when I hold this in my hand like this, I can tell, I don't know what it is, I can tell that the thing has been hardened. It just feels different. It almost feels like it's denser. I know that's ridiculous because it's not, but it just feels different. I don't know. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's not. So one thing real quick here is, as I'm flattening this, some of the best advice that I've ever gotten on hand sanding is to use sandpaper as if it's a free resource. Use it as if it's free, because it saves you so much time simply switching out a piece of sandpaper, and time is what makes knives. So you may be asking yourself why I'm flattening this now as opposed to after I'm finished grinding these bevels. And the reason for that is because I want this to sit as flat as possible against my grinding jig. Sometimes what will happen is you can have really small high spots and low spots along your flats, and it won't let the blade sit completely flat on your grinding jig, and that will show up in your grinds, especially when we're talking about flipping sides. So this side may sit slightly different than when we flip it over and have that side on. Anytime that you can have your surfaces as flat as possible before you do something important like finish grinding this bevel, the better off you're going to be. So here's the fully flattened blade. That's about as far as I'm going to take it for now. It still has kind of a weird surface finish here that I'll hand sand out later, but that's that's 150 grit flattened finish on there. And I don't know if this will the sound of this will come through on camera, but when you lay this on a really flat surface, you can almost like, it's so flat that the air that gets trapped between the two surfaces has a hard time escaping fast enough, and it'll just kind of like sit down on there, almost like a cushion. So we're completely flat all the way across the blade. So what I'm going to do now is, because I don't have through holes drilled here, I'm going to go to the grinder and hollow out this section here on one of the idler wheels. I think it's a 2-inch wheel, and that will allow the epoxy to basically, it'll give the epoxy somewhere to go and not all be squeezed out when we put the scales on. So I'm going to try to drill the back of this real quick to see if I can. I'd like to get a couple holes in here, and I might even try and drill down here a little bit just to see how far up this blade this steel actually hardened. So as you can see, this hardened a little bit, even this far up, without it even being in the oil. So here we go. Basically, I think we're ready to grind some bevels at this point. If my camera would focus. Come on. There we go. Hollowed out the back here a little bit. I'm not really worried about balance on this knife with the scales on it. It should even out nicely right about in this area, which is fine with me. Balance for smaller knives like this isn't a huge deal, in my opinion. I suppose it could be with thicker blades, but with 1/8-inch thick blades like this, it's not usually a problem. So, like I was saying, it's time to put this on the jig and finish grinding these bevels. Next video we'll probably throw together something on grinding the bevels. Tomorrow I'm going to be working on a video for the other YouTube channel and working on the shop over there. So hopefully everybody has a good night, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.